This video is intended to describe Majestic Levity Part 2. Part 1 got unfortunately cut off, so I must resume in a second part video because the 10 minutes I spoke previously in Part 1 was quite crucial. I do not want to scrap it. Right where I left off in Part 1 was describing the compatibility of the light cuffs of what were once called Ascension Wings, now can be considered Majestic Levity Ascension Wings, which obviously is quite the mouthful to say out loud. So I'm sure an abbreviation or an acronym will be developed for that whole name, because the big idea is taking the exact same primary blade band seen in Majestic Levity thus far mentioned in Part 1, is of course matching here with fresh auxiliary blade bandings for rather ambitious stationary cuffs of light tech as well. So the big aspect of why that's even relevant to be once again described in a description video is taking this exact overture of charoite, rutilated quartz, Libyan gold tektite on the same circuit generates significant vibrational compound interest. So in theory, if this was worn on the person, technically, apparently it can be, even though it's clocking in nearly 6 inches, seen right there. Having the cuffs equipped to be on the right and left wrists in tandem with the talisman being worn closer to the sacrum, it's quite a long cord for this purpose, would be a tremendous trifecta of the energy alignment of this significant broadcast, which in theory would generate a tremendous amount of yield through the auric field stimulation, which is a whole other subject. But of course, that's why these guys are being notarized once again. Even though a pre-existing video does exist of these, they are significantly upgraded, which I will admit, so this video does not have too many digressions. But that's the big idea of these guys in tandem with this guy. Okay, so in Part 1, I described the entire blade band ignition sequence, seen like so, which vaguely resembles a figure 8, so the energy pathway contains momentum of energy for all the other auxiliary crystals grounded to the primary wire to basically govern the excess flow of the energy of these other stones in a perpetual figure 8 status, seen like so, vaguely resembling, and to have its own ignition sequence of the primary engagement sequence. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start discussing the blade face and work my way up to the top. So down here is a very special master healer frequency I utilize quite excessively due to its extreme practical utilization of star argonite in a tumbled format. Star argonite is a lovely calcium-based full light body clear from top to bottom that works very rapidly as a master healer in calcium to clear stagnant energies from the top to bottom of the auric field. So it works very gently, very quickly to dismantle any patterns that be obstructing a natural healthy flow, which do oftentimes manifest as a form of dis-ease in the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual bodies. That's kind of the core aspect of the idea of this guy, of course, and then not to mention it terminated to a very aggressive circuit, in theory, with everything else here would generate tremendous vibrational compound interest in a closed-loop reactive circuit. Then right here is a rather critical component for such an ambitiously high vibratory platform that technically is a talisman, but is actually more of a wand of light-based technology, based on the focalizers, which I will get to. And I do my best to not digress as much as possible, because of course keeping this linear with this much vibrant energy is its own discipline requirement. So, right here, smoky celestial quartz. Smoky quartz, like mentioned in video 1, is a fantastic grounder of negativity by grounding all excess energy in Mother Earth for two-way dialysis reprocessing. Then the aspect that makes the celestial structure quite significant is that the growth pattern of celestial has a certain way of resonating with the auric field to work as an autoregulator based on the governance of the higher self. It's quite meta discussing this in linear terms, but it has a great utilization purpose for light tech, particularly of high yield nature. So the aspect of celestial also works as a higher self autoregulator of dimmer switch of energy, which works as a buffer to make sure the optimum equilibrium pitch is maintained based on the highest good, situationally moment to moment, playing in the 3D illusion of time progression to maintain optimum equilibrium, which I know is quite meta, very rabbit hole, tinfoil hat territory, but it is indeed a functional purpose as a contingency and I guess you could say a surge protector to ensure the amount of frequency coursing through this is in optimum pitch with the environment, as well as most importantly the wielder of this construct when she has this engaged, which is be pretty interesting. And next to that right here would be the lovely legendary Herkimer diamond, a lovely clear quartz spectrum from Herkimer, New York that's quite in vogue for being a very notarized high vibration clear ray crystal. Technically a quartz, but its vibrant spectrum is very, very similar to the entire chakra column, particularly the higher chakras of spiritual connection. So, and also in application to a termination sequence, makes for a tremendous super amplification of the entirety of the emanation. So that makes a nice, vibrant, purified spiritual light intensification through the entire closed-loop reactive circuit, just in case it needed it. Then right here would be Tiffany stone, also known as purple passion, which is a quite fantastic and rather rare purple ray stone that is actually opalized fluorite. So it has a lovely aspect of, to be expected to be a crown chakra stimulant, and also since it has an aspect of fluorite, a great bringer of order out of chaos in the mineral kingdom. It's a force of order in the mineral kingdom that is pretty effective for basically clarifying and stabilizing the energies, as well as the perception of the clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, all that jazz is highly augmented by this particular frequency of purple passion. So that's quite the special, rare addition to this construct that, of course, has a very heavy purple ray concentration, seen right there in Tiffany stone. Then moving on to be somewhat of a contingency to this excessively fiery energy would be Larimar. Larimar is a fantastic 5th and 6th chakra stimulant, as well as a great soother of the 5th, and also is a polarity of fire and water combined in one stone, which is very hard pressed to find that polarity found much in the mineral kingdom, which can also serve as a great segue balancer between the soothing aspect as well as the excessive fiery yield and high vibratory broadcast of this very ambitious crystal pistol. Then right here is a special variety of black tektite called Agni Manatite, which is of course a very powerful resonance to encourage the full light body from the black ray, thank goodness, ground up stimulation, much like black tektite, to intensify the vibratory yield. But once again, what makes it very important, worth mentioning twice intentionally, is the aspect of the ground up intensive vibrational yield increasement. So of course that means the entire of the bottom of the vibratory field having a stronger vibratory baseline emanation goes a very long way for legitimately increasing vibrations from the ground up, which is a big purpose of any kind of lightworking alchemical endeavors, in my humble opinion, and that's seen right there. So right here also, seen actually on both sides, right here, which I'll work my way back down, will be Sugilite. Sugilite is a rather fantastic, to be expected, purple ray violet crown chakra stimulant of great intensity and great spiritual protection. And actually this variety of Sugilite is very hard to find these days, because roughly about 10 years ago from the time period 2025 during this video, they have been mostly out of distribution, because when it hit the scene for all crystal enthusiasts, it was quite explosive in its amazing discovery, and it was very hard to find particularly this pristine variety of the lavender purple Sugilite these days, because they're very rare in the mines where they came from. And so, well, what that of course means from my rambles is that the will of the force had a way of providing me an ideal opulent purple ray structure for this very ambitious project. And Sugilite is very fantastic for purifying the entire auric field by inducing high-frequency light to ground through the entire system. It also makes for a lovely bubble of light, a very, very powerful purified psychic shield generator, basically. And then next to that would be Amethyst, a lovely and, thank goodness, relatively common traditional violet ray stimulant. That is another aspect of divine gateway purification, works great in tandem with Sugilite for that purpose. Then right here would be Scoicite. Scoicite is what I consider a quintessential stone of divinity, being a white ray, wind elemental, 6th, 7th, 8th, non-physical chakra back to the Godhead stimulant, yet it also has a great calming, soothing aspect of the conscious mind, which can be very intrinsic and aligned to the conscious self of the highest self alignment in the witness self perspection. And what that means, of course, is being very calm in the divine mind to mitigate the EMI, ego mind deity chatter, if you would, and makes for a great boon, I guess you could say, of just the white light of creation through the field. Then this section is quite exotic, so I will do my best to consolidate to key points. This right here will be a special variety of quartz called Fade-In quartz. Faden quartz is actually quite special because in its growth cycle, it actually breaks and restitches for its entire life cycle as it grows, which means it constantly restitches and breaks, it restitches the bridges. And what that, of course, actually means is that the structure of the quartz makes for a very fantastic mimicking of the energy of fixing breaks from top to bottom. So it could be the equivalent of vibrational fix-a-flat. So if there's a leak in the auric field, it can make great concessions to stitch and solder these points that would cause a continuity disruption that would, of course, manifest as a physical problem, and be an excellent way to stitch the vibration of whatever the continuity break is from top to bottom of the auric field, while the rest of the crystalline allies, of course, will work in tandem to re-solder and amend the problem at the etheric level, aka manifesting as physical vibrancy. Then right here is another very special crystal called intrapolite, which can also be considered Arcturian selenite. It's a very, very long story, so I'll keep it consolidated as much as possible. Infinitite is only from one spot and somewhere in the obscure southwest from one crystal finder that actually I personally know who found it via the will of the Force. It's a very ridiculous story steeped in mythology, quite honest, for any kind of practical dissertation's sake. But the very long story short is when the rock enthusiast found this and was guided to this particular site of about only 100 square yards in the area in the obscure Four Corners area, which I will not mention, of course. And it had a very strong vibratory yield signature he noticed right away. Then, of course, he had this tested by many different councils of psychic mediums and many channelers, and actually had many pages on the dossier of this particular origin. And what it comes down to is apparently, according to many intuitives and psychics that were over a dozen of these high-level intuitives were consulted for the origin of this stone. They all concluded that this was apparently the imprintation site of an Arcturian spacecraft landing and actually downloading the energy into the Earth and going off, and that's what's maintained here. That's a good story, quite legendary, and that being said, its vibratory projection is quite intensive because I do utilize selenite very much almost every construct and distribution will have an element of selenite for a critical purpose, which I'll describe later. So this has a certain aspect of being a selenite that behaves more like a high vibratory white ray crystal of naturalite, perhaps, or phenakite, other really intense white ray crystals that are quite expensive and exotic based on their metaphysical potency. It reminds me of that in a selenite format. So I think that's enough of that. And I will move on now to another legendary stone of moldavite. Moldavite, even in a small dose, is a quintessential cosmic kick in the pants concerning the heart chakra stimulation of storm elemental composition of extreme yield. So moldavite is the quintessential green ray, considered to be a holy grail resonant frequency to put one in touch with their direct dharma connection in real life very quickly. That's why, of course, moldavite has had bad rap these days for being an extremely high yield frequency that actually does change one's life. And they have TikTok videos talking about how this crystal ruined their lives, because indeed it does ruin the false self matrix of what the manifestation of that emanation of being in that false self configuration gets rapidly destroyed into connection to their spirit. So it is the quintessential dharmic accelerant, I could say. But God willing, with all these different buffers and diffusers and grounders, it, of course, I work very vigilantly to mitigate the timeline whiplash this guy produces by itself. And so you get that cosmic acceleration dharmic alignment in a small dose in reactive circuit to intensify that connection to the Holy Grail, or the quest for one's divinity, essentially, made manifest. Then right here is a lovely bigger slab of chaurite, just like mentioned in the bead format, just a lovely bigger flat of it to have a heavy homage of that frequency as well. And like I mentioned, the purple ray quintessential dharmic accelerant that actually makes a great contact patch into Earth. So that was pretty fabulous to have that heavier dose of that. Then, at the very tip of the technical core would be a piece of fulgurite. It's very well concealed at this point. So fulgurite is a very intensive power of lightning, literally lightning being petrified into sand, carrying the lightning energy in a circuit to be a dramatic full light body activator as well. And it was utilized by First Nation shamans to intensify their prayers back to spirit, back to creator, in service to the tribes and their people. So it's a classic spirit tool of great magical, powerful connotation. And so obviously having the power of lightning mimic through a circuit goes a long way for a very powerful full lightning mimicking full light body activation. I only laugh partially because this is just a very ambitious project as I notarize it, and it's quite vibrant, to put it lightly. So that would be the blade banding, blade face, seen right here. I will mention this section of the selenite and kyanites for very last because they are a great capstone for the dissertation. So now, moving on. This section right here is technically where this lovely, majestic purple leather will be installed, much like so, which actually has a great purpose. The purple leather, of course, plays a violet ray color therapy emanation, a way to also insulate and condense the energy of this entire section, and C, be a way to actually protect these subtle stones as they're living happy ever after with the wielder who is wielding it to give them heaven out there, essentially. And also, D, last but not least, but kind of least indeed for me, is also aesthetic functional. Get kind of a better example for the dissertation's sake. Right here, of course, having leather on top like that also makes for a nice aesthetic completion of the construct, but indeed it actually is functional and not really truly for looks. Okay, so then right here is the lovely legendary seraphinite. So seraphinite, being a green ray stone named after the seraphim archangels, makes for an obvious heart chakra stimulation, yet the seraphic imbuement brings a full light body activation from top to bottom in a very powerful way to entrain the energies of the seraphic realms, which are the entities close to source that are still self-conscious and not one with the one, if you would. And so the seraphic nature of this brings a great physical imbuement to the entire auric field, and I consider to be one of the quintessential true master healers to dismantle any patterns of dis-ease in all the bodies simultaneously. So naturally, these two in tandem, them being the seraphinite and the saragonite, work fantastic. And part of the trio I utilize for this particular same pathway augmentation would be Tibetan black quartz. Tibetan black quartz, just like mentioned with these guys, stimulates the entire light body from top to bottom with extreme healing potentiality of the Om frequency from Tibet. And so the trifecta of the star aragonite, the seraphinite, and the Tibetan black quartz is what I consider the trio of master healers that I utilize quite often in many ambitious constructs for obvious full light body spectrum healing from top to bottom to dismantle any patterns of dis-ease that be plaguing the system manifesting as an ailment. So that'd be that with those guys, with Tibetan black quartz, seraphinite, as well as star aragonite. The trio of the master healers. Then right here is a lovely piece of rhodonite. Rhodonite, being a pink ray crystal, obviously has the aspect of promotion of high heart love stimulation. Yet what makes rhodonite quite special is also the more focused stimulation of outer projection of love, which provides almost an archetypal psychic link to one's highest path to service to creation in general, which is very nice to have that little dose in such an ambitiously powerful construct, because indeed there is a purpose to why this high vibratory yield device tool exists. More than just for looks and for a cool experience, actually is developed to be a serious tool to utilize in serious light work. So that aspect of the rhodonite makes for a great alignment of the conscious self to be in touch and hone their magical skills in service to creation. It's very much a stone of conviction and discipline out of love, which is very nice. And at the very, very apex of this core, and also I did forget to mention this, the entire wooden core of this device is actually Sedona juniper from my favorite vortice from my best tree friend I have in the Southwest. And so the core, that clocks in roughly 4 inches, despite all the augmentations getting it to about 6 inches, is from a juniper tree next to Bell Rock in Sedona. Fun fact before I continue forward, which of course carries the intrinsic vortice energy of Sedona of great potency. Okay, then right here at the very tip is quite a special component. This is a clear apophyllite pyramid. Apophyllite is a tremendous 6th, 7th, 8th, and all the non-physical chakras a divine alignment of the celestial angelic realms made into the physical perception range. And so that being the very apex of this really ambitious circuit, then of course broadcasting straight, recirculating to here, is a great boon to extreme obvious divinity energy of tapping into the higher realms, and of course, God willing, bring it here into Earth where it matters the most. So that'd be the apophyllite pyramid seen right here from a better angle. Alrighty. So now I'll be discussing the selenites now that all the other crystals are notarized, and besides the focalizers. So, the selenite plays a very critical role in virtually all light tech for a very distinct purpose. So selenite by itself can be considered a true master healer by being a tremendous 6th, 7th, and all the non-physical chakras back to the Godhead alignment, which can be construed to be a very powerful two-way connection to the conscious self and the higher self made manifest, as well as burning off any stagnant energies from top to bottom that be impeding the natural healthy light body flow. So by itself it's quite tremendous. But where it really truly shines in any given spiritual application is the aspect of taking this entire circuit, and as it runs through the system, it can, and the combined videos of half an hour so far can purify all components I've mentioned so far. They can take the entire circuit and it can harmonize all of these frequencies. Then take the entire circuit and amplify or intensify. So when you have the aspect of consistent purification, amplification, and harmonization, that's truly the triumphant trifecta of a truly tremendous spirit tool. And yes, that's why selenites play such a critical role in virtually all light tech for that distinct purpose, to of course take the entire overture pitch and most importantly put in connection with the higher self, so that the electromagnetic interference that be impeding one's conscious self from their divine blueprint is of course mitigated as much as possible. And at least that is always the big intention of most light tech in general. To, of course, empower those who serve creation, is the bottom line. Okay, so then also, right here, against the selenites, are also the 4 spectrums of kyanite. So kyanite, as a quick preface, also works as a fantastic bridger and transfer of energy in the mineral kingdom. So how that's applied here with black kyanite being the most rapid transference of the black ray grounding through the earth can also serve as a tremendous surge protector to ensure the energy contact patch getting through the auric field is constantly grounding for a safe discharge bypass, and also most importantly actually make the magic real. Then orange kyanite is a sacrum stimulant to a very, very high yield that automatically transfers back to basically divine blueprint status very quickly with creativity unimpeded. Then the aspect of the green kyanite bridges the heart chakra very quickly through the entire yield from everything. And then blue kyanite is a very powerful third eye stimulant that bridges the neural pathways to the highest configuration. So what that means, of course, the 4 together make for the most rapid transfers of energy from heaven to earth and everything in between, very quick and very, very, very amazing. And also, since it transfers energy and redirects and buffers so quickly, it also serves as a great another layer of etheric Teflon of negative energy, unable to interact with the field when engaged with this construct, to make the transfers very powerful. As well as it plays a critical role in actually being able to transfer the energy to a broadcast field. For example, my tree buddy back here, this is me pointing it at that. So the aspect of the kyanite makes the transferable energy more real in that capacity. At least that's the intentional design. And that's why now I'll be discussing the focalizers as the near capstone of this video concerning the crystalline notarization. So right here is titanium auric quartz at the end of the focalizers. Titanium auric quartz actually is an alchemical man-made current rendition of a pressure coating of titanium on clear quartz. And so why that's so useful and so well utilized in light tech is the titanium stimulates a very powerful full rainbow light body activation from top to bottom, as well as being a very high frequency insulation when engaged to protect the aura from weaker frequencies. So that's very useful in, of course, strengthening the entirety of the energy field when engaged with this guy, because it obviously is indeed to be a very serious piece of equipment to be wielded. And so that further strengthens the auric field quite dramatically. And not to mention, being the backside of Lemurian clear quartz also brings that strengthening focus of the energy, which technically almost makes it a wand because indeed it has a focus system, which is not usually on talismans because talismans are usually very personal and just run a radial force. This actually gives it a directional purpose of focus to actually take the excess current and ground the broadcast much like so, much like a miniature wand. And so, the aspect also of Lemurian clear quartz serves as a great neutral energy broadcast projector, which can take the ambient frequency of this figure 8 and give it a directional focus. Of course, this is grounded into the primary wire to take the excess vaguely resembling figure 8 and then direct the energy focus right here, which of course would technically make it more of a light blade wand than a typical talisman, because indeed it has authentic broadcast intentional focalizers to actually direct and wield and broadcast current for that purpose. So I believe that will be the entirety of the crystalline composition notarized at this point in parts 1 and 2 of this Majestic Levity video. And what's great too is it does remind me vaguely of a spaceship, which kind of makes me laugh, almost like a spaceship one can wear, which is kind of a hilarious touch, because it definitely has that certain really intensive otherworldly emanation in what I've said 5 times so far in these 2 description videos. And technically a talisman, because indeed it has a very thick leather strap to be worn on the neck, which will be a lot of fun for the wielder of this device as she gets out there and gives them heaven. Okay, so as a summary, after all this 2 videos and nearly more than half an hour of discussion, both of them, the big idea of this is being such a powerful majestic levity idea is to bring such a tremendous high yield energy through the system to be directed through the solar plexus into tangible range of one's highest dharma with very obvious impactful gusto, essentially. So that would be the comprehensive tour of both part 1 and part 2 of Majestic Levity, the Lightblade Talisman wand, I guess. I almost have to give it a new classification because this is quite an ambitious departure from my typical constructs, if you would, and it's very exciting in that regard for progression's sake, and also of course ridiculously high potent vibratory yield. And once again, the cuffs can match the frequency very easily now, so that when worn on the person, having the talisman installed with these installed in the cuffs would generate a trifecta of energy for a very powerful reactive closed loop circuit to intensify the vibrational compound interest of these worn all together, which could be almost considered tremendous Magi God King Pharaoh configuration, if I dare say so, actually, with the theoretical concept seen before me. Anyway, okay, well, I think it's enough rambling about this for one day. 1,000 blessings, and may everybody have a good day.